Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of The Damage Report here under lockdown. Hope you're all well. I'm feeling good for a couple of reasons. One, we have some good news on the show. I barely remembered what that term meant. But also, we have a very special co-host who's going to be joining me throughout this episode. One of, clearly funniest comedians, but also brings passion and fire. And this is a time where we need as much of that as we can possibly get. Aida Rodriguez, welcome to The Damage Report.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I'm so excited.
I love this show.
Thank you. No, I'm really excited, and I'm glad that we have some negative dark news that we're gonna be talking about, but to have a little bit of positive news too, I think is a rare thing. We were just talking before the show about how it's easy to feel like you're surrounded by really bad people all the time. So I'm glad to have a really good person joining me on the show today.
Ditto. I'm glad to be here. You're always, I look to you with hope on your Twitter when I wake up, because I know that even though you always point out a lot of things that need to be pointed out from your white male perspective, you still do it with kindness and thoughtfulness. So I appreciate you.
Thank you. I don't know about you. I feel like I'm tweeting less. I feel like considering everything that's going on, Twitter is always sort of a mixed bag.
Yeah.
I'm having a harder time just constantly being on it, honestly. Like this has been a rough year, and as you just pointed out, I'm coming at it from one of the easiest positions, and for me it's hard. I can only imagine for other people trying to stay engaged constantly, not just out on the streets, but also everywhere you go on your phone and everything. It must be overwhelming.
It's hard, and I agree. I'm always saying this. It feels like when the children of Lord of the Flies devolved to the point where they started killing each other. That's what Twitter feels like to me now. And, Donald Trump is always kill Piggy. And so I try my best I've been staying away. It used to be a place where you could have a discourse. Now, if someone disagrees with something you say, they want you dead, as opposed to, I don't know, there's just no extending of an olive branch to anybody to say, hey, let's have a conversation about this. This is problematic, and maybe that's antiquated, the whole, it's not my job to educate people. But I personally want an informed village, and I don't want to lose my sense of humanity in the midst of this, because then I will be emulating the people that I detest.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's that's the struggle is, you, as bad as it can get, like personally, emotionally, psychologically, like, oh, if you back off, then they won't, the bad people won't. And there's a lot of them. So, yeah. Well, everyone who is already here waiting for the show, thank you so much for joining us. Please hit the like button and share the stream so more people know that we're live. We're going to be responding to your tweets at hashtag TDR Live and your comments and your super chats and all that as we go on. I already saw a bunch that I set aside. A very positive response to seeing Aida on the show today.
Oh,
so
wow.
we're gonna be reading some of that in just a little bit. I see a shout out for Lord of the Flies. That's good. But anyway, Aida, why don't we jump into the news, because we have a little bit of good news. You know what? Let's start with dessert. Okay. The rare good news morning, with the Supreme Court striking down at least this iteration of Donald Trump's attempt to completely invalidate and remove DACA. They ruled Thursday that the Trump administration can't carry out its plan to shut down the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, which has allowed nearly 800,000 young people known as Dreamers to avoid deportation and remain in the U.S. This program has allowed young unauthorized immigrants who came to the U.S. before age 16 to obtain legal status and work authorization if they pursued education or service in the armed forces or Coast Guard and passed a background check. And the ruling was very specific, unfortunately. So it's good news, but also a little bit ominous, in that they said that the government failed to give an adequate justification for ending the federal program. The administration could try again in the future to shut it down by offering a more detailed explanation. And the thing is, they were warned beforehand that you can't just invalidate it, but they were apparently so confident, so arrogant, that they decided, we're not going to bother to give an excuse. We're just going to outlaw the entire thing. And thankfully, thanks to a 5-4 decision, as close as it could be, it has, at least for now, been invalidated.
What's funny is that you say they were confident and arrogant. I say they're that dumb.
Well,
You know,
there's definitely that too.
that they're the rule of law. And I mean, with the Supreme Court, I mean, Donald Trump tweeted today. Does anybody think is starting to think that the Supreme Court doesn't like me? Which really lets you know what he thinks about the our law, our Constitution, our Supreme Court, which he does every day, as he insults American democracy and rule of law. But it's so interesting that he was like, they don't like me because they didn't choose me versus the immigrants, which is the code language that he always uses when he's speaking to his base. But you know what? I think that's great, and I'm happy about it. Don't get what I tell my people is, and when I say my people, I'm just talking about the people who are about progress, is do not get complacent because we just won a battle and we still have a long war ahead of us. What about those people, those children that were deported? Are they coming back? Can they come back to finish their schooling? And and also, a big shout out to all of those DACA students who fought for themselves, because a lot of people like to take credit and come aboard and say we did the work. They did the work.
Yeah.
They stood up and they fought for themselves. So a big shout out to all the undocumented students who really fought for what America is supposed to stand for.
Yeah. I want to read, Erica Green on Twitter tweeted a quote from a DACA recipient that was on CNN this morning, responding to it, saying, "This is not a long-term solution. Trump could choose to rescind this program tomorrow. He knows how to do it. The Supreme Court is telling him, so we are not safe. So I'm going to celebrate today, but I'm going to fight tomorrow." And I love that. Right. And I want to give a few stats on the Dreamers that I thought were pretty amazing. So first of all, immigration lawyers pointed out that as of right now, there are 27,000 DACA recipients that include dentists, pharmacists, physician assistants, home health aides, technicians, and nearly 200 medical students. So in the midst of a pandemic that we're going to continue to acknowledge, even though much of the media is pretending isn't happening, they are massively overrepresented in the heroes that we've been acknowledging.
Our essential workers.
Exactly. Exactly. And by the way, zooming out from that, over 90% have a job, nearly half are in school, and of course, as many have acknowledged, many don't speak the language or know the culture of their home countries because they have no actual memory of it. Honestly, I don't know, if you wanted to find a group, just one demographic variable of who represents the best of us, the hardest working, the most serving, all of that, Dreamers might be that category, actually. Sure. And that's why it's so pernicious that the right has targeted them in particular. They hate all immigrants, but they especially seem angry that there is this group that really defies all of the narratives and stereotypes that the right has tried to apply on immigrants over the past few decades. Right,
because mediocrity always comes for excellence. And that's what it is. You're talking about a bunch of, look at Matt Gaetz, for example, who can't, talking about this imaginary family that he doesn't have, and speaking on it with conviction as if he is speaking from an intelligent point of view. And you think about all of these people who, because of privilege, have these positions of power and have all these opportunities and still come up short and are mediocre. And the fact that these people it has to be pointed out that they don't know their language and they're not familiar with the cultures of their homelands, as a plus is so sad, because the extermination of the cultures of people of color is always part of, assimilating us into this country. And it is always listed as an attribute when it should be sad, because Irish people have an opportunity to celebrate St. Patrick's Day, and and Jewish people speak Yiddish, and nobody, you're not trying to take away their cultural stuff from them, and their homeland are Israel and Ireland. But when it comes to people of color, it is like they don't even speak their own the language of their homeland, they're and that's really messed up. But
well, if I could just say, the only reason I pointed out is it would be particularly cruel to send these people back when it would be the same as sending me.
No, I know.
I don't know anyone. I don't know the language. I don't know, but you're 100% right. The expectations for assimilation are so weirdly tilted group by group. You're 100% right about that.
No, Eastern Europeans, are they are celebrated. Oh, Hungarians and the skincare and the grandmothers and this. But when
Hmm.
it comes to us, it's like, hey guys, we don't speak Spanish. And it's really messed up that that happens. But and I know that you weren't doing that from that point of view, but I was just pointing out
Yeah.
that this is a talking point, right? And this is where you see it in so many other places. And of course, if they go back to El Salvador, not speaking Spanish, not only are they not familiar with their culture, they're also in danger.
Yeah. 100%. Yes. Yeah.
That is
100%.
messed up.
Yeah, Matt Gaetz recently, like I don't know if you saw his interactions with some other congressman
Yeah.
yesterday. He's just an embarrassment. I mean, he has lifelong been an embarrassment.
That was him
But
talking about his wife and children that don't exist to a black man. And that's why I'm no longer having the All Lives Matter analogy forum for people who need to be explained, because the truth of it is that they don't want to hear it.
mhm,
To sit there and listen to a black man who's expressing pain for things that both Democrats, Republicans alike have admitted is real, right? And to still say all lives matter, it's not a stand of morale or a stand of principle. It is a call out to a specific group of people who don't believe that Black lives matter. And
mhm.
that's what it is at this point. And you got to call it what it is. It is not standing up for white lives, because white lives are not in danger on a daily basis. So we don't have to have
Exactly.
that conversation. So for him to do that is him trying to get patted on the head from Donald Trump, which he's always trying to do, and him calling out to that specific base, because that's all they have to hang on to. Because anybody who has a soul, an intellect, or any level of decency cannot ride with that program any longer.
Yeah.
So that's why that's their last stand. They got to call out to the people who can't read, and the people who are out there who have no education and no information and no value or self-worth, and saying the only thing that you have going for you is that you're white. So
Mhm.
here I am, I see you. And that's sad. Instead of working on programs to make lives better for all Americans.
100%. You are only 100% right. Okay, before we jump into other news, let's read some of what the audience has been saying. Amber said, I literally screamed yes when I saw Ida's face.
Oh.
Jedi Protector said, I heard Ida on Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me a while ago, and she was hilarious.
Thanks.
Awesome. You got to check out her Netflix special. It is something. One of like my favorite nights out in LA in the 8 years I've lived here was watching the filming of you for the Netflix special. It was awesome. I mean, there was a lot of really talented people that night, but seeing you especially like in your element, it was awesome.
Oh, thank you. That made me happy. You sent me an email, and it was just, I remember. So thank you.
Thank you for a great night. Danny says, Ida is top 5 hosts ever for me. And Dale says, yay, Ida, bringing that truth serum to TDR. Feisty Fan says, super chat for Ida, love you, girl.
Love you back.
And Lauren says, Ida, hi. TDR is my favorite show. I look forward to it every day at work. You're a breath of fresh air down here in Baton Rouge. Well, thank you, Lauren, for both of us, I imagine.
Thank you.
F. Harvey says, at last, Ida on TDR. Thank you for you both and the whole TYT crew. Well, thank you for that. We're going to be, catching up on more as we go, but there's a lot of news to get to. So why don't we press forward on that? Okay, here we go. Okay. So we're now many weeks into the protests in cities around the country, supported by protests in countries around the world. And honestly, even on TDR, our coverage a lot of the time focuses on the vicious violence against the protesters, the terrible misinformation and dishonest narratives, trying to say what the right thinks the protesters are trying to accomplish. And all of that is true, and all of that needs to be fought against. But we also thought it might be useful to try to take stock of some of what has already been produced by these protests. What has not been produced is what the protests are essentially calling for, which is a fundamental rebooting of law enforcement and, rethinking the philosophy of all of it and divorcing it from its racist roots. We don't have that yet, but we do have some things. And the producers here at TDR have put together a great list of some of the changes. So I just wanted to run a few of them past you so that we can, take stock a little bit. So San Francisco announced last week that trained unarmed professionals will respond to non-criminal calls instead of police. On Saturday, Colorado lawmakers passed a bill to introduce sweeping police changes, including banning chokeholds and requiring officers to intervene if they see excessive force being used. On that, I would love to see what the consequences are if they don't intervene, because if it's a slap on the wrist, then it's not going to change anything. But let's see a little bit more. The Louisville Metro Council has voted unanimously to ban no-knock warrants. The legislation was titled Briannas Law in honor of a woman who was killed during a raid on her home earlier this year. We've got more that we'll go to, but what do you think so far? I don't know if we talked much about the protests. What do you think about the effort, the strike back, and what's been accomplished?
So if anyone knows, when I talk about issues of police, I always make sure that I always speak with fairness, right? Because I don't think that all cops are bad, right? And I don't think that all cops who don't speak up are bad either. I think some of them are scared, because if we're talking about gang behavior and gang activity, we have to believe that women are intimidated, people of color are intimidated, other white allies who don't think stuff. Look what happened to that one Black woman who spoke up about someone getting choked. They fired her. Yeah. They're trying to pass a law. So big ups to San Francisco, because in addition to addressing the concern of its citizens, it is also taking care of law enforcement in a way that is, I think, it's productive to the holistic approach of what we're doing with law enforcement, because a lot of times police officers are overworked, they're underpaid, they are tired of the Karens. They're on the beat over, working 12, 16 hours, and here this white woman is calling a cop because Black people are having a barbecue in the park. Yeah. So all of that stuff has to weigh on the psyche. So if you take away, you create the people to do that so that law enforcement can really focus on law enforcement while you rehabilitate, restore, rebuild, and do what you need to do with law enforcement. You are also delegating responsibilities to, it's funny when you see the joke about, or the cartoon of the fireman going to rescue the cat, but the fireman going to rescue the cat is costing the taxpayers dollars, and is also exhausting that fireman that needs to be ready to go fight a fire. So when I think the protests are just the beginning. Like I said about DACA, these are all battles. We are in a war. It's been in play for so many years. But the no-knock warrants, it's a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. Briannas Law is lovely, but what's going to happen in that case about who's going to be brought to justice because of negligence? Someone has lost their life, and someone whose reputation has been tarnished. And those are just 3 police departments that we're talking about, maybe 4. And we have how many police departments in this country? And so now, we're dealing with the pushback of people who think that we just want to abolish police and let ourselves, because they don't understand what defund the police means. So I think that, I'm going to always celebrate the wins, but I'm just not going to get complacent in the moment, because I know that there's a long road ahead of what we're dealing with. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to read a few more, but definitely don't get complacent, because at a federal level, Trump doesn't want to do literally anything. We're going to have some of him talking about the protests in a little bit. He doesn't want to do anything, as Ida points out. For every department that we mention here, there's 200 that haven't done anything. In Atlanta, supposedly, a bunch of cops have walked off the job saying, if you don't want us, we're not gonna do our job. So we'll see. So it's certainly not all wins. But let me give you a little bit more of some of what's been done. The Say Their Name agenda for police reform put forward by Governor Andrew Cuomo would make police disciplinary records transparent, ban chokeholds, make false race-based 911 reports a hate crime. Further, the New York Attorney General, instead of the local DA, will act as an independent prosecutor for police officers accused of murder. And if I would have to guess, in the next few years, the biggest impact that will have is that police unions, rather than donating in DA races, will donate for the choice of the AG. Right. So, but maybe for a year or 2, it'll be good until that independence is gone. Let's see. We've also got the Minneapolis City Council a little while back passed a resolution to replace the police department with a community-led public safety system. They also then made clear that that's sort of an aspirational thing. Here, I can get you framed up. You just be comfortable, and I'll get you framed up. Okay. So who knows if that'll ever actually end up happening. But I guess it's something. And in DC, where the mayor, I think, well, has previously, if you go back a couple of years, had some really critical comments of Black Lives Matter, did sign legislation banning police from using neck restraints on suspects. The bill also bans the use of tear gas, pepper spray, rubber bullets, and stun grenades to disperse protesters. And the council also passed a bill that requires the mayor to release police body camera video from any police-involved death or serious use of force within 3 days of the incident, which I guess is something. Doesn't necessarily stop them from suspiciously breaking the camera or turning it off, or juries doing anything when they see the footage, because very often those juries don't seem convinced by the fact that body cam footage shows them shooting someone in the back. But it is a few wins.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it's wins. I think one of the funniest things that we deal with when it comes to police is that the police says, hey, wait a minute, guys, hold on 1 second. We're going to investigate ourselves and let you know what we did. And then they come back and they say, oh, you know what? We didn't do anything wrong. And we have witnesses, other police. So when we talk up of reforming the police, we do need an independent, entity that is going to investigate these wrongful, acts that have cost people their eyes during the protest. Did you see how many people with these rubber bullets? Because people hear rubber bullets and they think that they are not dangerous, that they cannot be lethal, and it's unheard of. And a good other thing that they can do is hold those cops accountable that behave so egregiously during the protest and cause so much harm to the citizens of this country who employ them. Like that there were a lot of, I saw so much footage of people bleeding and being beaten and being kicked and being punched. We have to make examples of them. They are also citizens of this country. They are employed by us. They are servants of the public. And with those of you, this is the argument, John, that bothers me the most is when people say, my job is to get home to my family. No, your job is for me to get home safe to my family.
Yes.
And I need you to understand that. And if you don't want that job, there are a lot of jobs where your life is not in danger like that. But when you take that oath, the oath is for you to protect and serve your citizens. And it's very self-centered and very selfish of you to say that. And that does not mean that we want to see police officers die or get murdered. And when you think about the woman at the McDonald's who was upset about waiting 5 minutes for an Egg McMuffin, just imagine George Floyd had a knee on his neck longer than that, and she was complaining about waiting for an Egg McMuffin for 5 minutes, and 3 more minutes and 46 seconds there was a knee on George Floyd's neck that led to his death. So we don't get enough thank yous. You sound like me when I was on the honor roll. You know what my dad used to say? My dad used to say, you doing well in school is your job. You don't get praised for doing what you're supposed to do. Yeah. So we don't owe you thank you. We give it to you. That's us being kind human beings, but we don't owe you thank you. You get paid for your job. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're given an incredible amount of power, which is misused in so many cases. Yeah, you point out, the Floyd comparison, but also look at, so she had to wait for a few minutes for a McMuffin, which I'm sure you have. I've had to wait occasionally.
Every time.
I enjoy a good McMuffin, but sometimes it takes a little while. Look how Rashad Brooks was treated in his time in a drive-in. It's worse, I would say. Absolutely. So it was just so tone deaf. Oh my God. But yeah, you're 100% right. The rubber bullets have maimed people. I've seen photos of people that look like they were hit by an IED. Basically, they were so bloodied and cut up, and then just the insane tactics of the police that we saw that coming out of this need to be addressed. The penning protesters in, so the cops on one side say to go away, cops on the other side say to go away, but they're blocking both of the exits, and then they tear gas them. Yeah. Or I don't know if you saw the bizarre video of there's a protester trying to walk away, and the cops are following him, and one walks up beside him, walks ahead fast in front of him, and then stops, so the protester accidentally bumps into him, and the second he bumps into him, all the cops swarm him and start attacking him. Little things like that, shooting out the windows of people when they see people filming from it and all that.
Oh, I saw that. Lord of the Flies, John. Lord of the Flies. Kill Piggy. And And when people make comparisons to Hitler's reign and what they did and the horrific, from someone who's been to Israel and has actually gone to the Holocaust Museum and seen some of the footage and the videos, when you see the way that those people behaved, is that you have to start studying the psychology of the people in law enforcement, because there is some level of mental illness when you become so consumed with power and you so consumed with policing other people and understanding that now you have power, that you use it to abuse. And it's the same mentality, and maybe not to that degree and that extreme, but it is the beginning of that when you start seeing law enforcement behave in this terroristic manner. Yeah. And when people were like, oh, those cops that quit because of the 2 officers that knocked the older gentleman in Buffalo, I was like, we should say thank you, because if that's their attitude, we don't need them out there during the riots. Yeah. Those are the people that are against protecting and serving the citizens and their constitutional rights. So we should be glad that they quit and don't want to be a part of the riot task force, because they're toxic, and look what they do and look what they condone. And 100%. That man can't even walk.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, before we move on to other news, let me read a few more of the super chats. Max Moraski says, as a former downtown Tulsa resident, I am predicting sheer pandemonium on Saturday, even if presumed protests are peaceful. Very worried.
Yeah, sorry, my heart is with you, especially on the ground, because that is where the terroristic massacre of Black people took place. For the Black Wall Street. So there's that's in that energy. So I get it. And I understand the history and the tension of the geography, which is what makes me question why I hold it there in the first place. But
100%.
I told you, the mediocre is calling on the mediocre, the ignorant, the hateful, the angry, the hurt, because at this point, everybody else who has sense is like, we can't rock with that program.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Derek Walker says, so glad to see Ida. Nice. Lily Umper says, always love to see Ida. One-upping the previous comment. And then says, more Ida, John. Okay. Let's see. A lot of hatred for Matt Gaetz. We'll get to those a little bit later on. I saw a big super chat for Manuel Fernandez, who says, it gives me great pleasure that there are not only Trumpies in the USA. Your president is a threat to the whole world, and it is your job and responsibility to eliminate this threat. Castings from Switzerland. Thank you, Manuel.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. I mean, seeing how many people wanted to go to that rally is depressing, after all that we've seen. G. George, thank you for your super chat. And let's see. Wayne Sugahara says, Ida and John together again. John, you have the best co-hosts and are even timely with them. What great producing for your show. Thank you. Well, that producing that you're referring to, that was Angel and Marissa that did 95% of that. So they get the credit.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. With that, I apologize, everyone, but we are going to have to turn now to Donald Trump, who is unfortunately still the president.
I love when you make me laugh.
Well, we laugh now, but just hold on, because he's going to be talking about the protests and police violence, so it's going to get kind of dark pretty quickly. So prepare yourself. But here we go. Donald Trump was interviewed last night by Sean Hannity. So as you can imagine, it was a very difficult interview full of hard-hitting questions. No, it wasn't. But they did talk about some of what's been going on in this country, including both the pandemic, but especially the protests as well. And so here is Donald Trump talking about George Floyd and Rashad Brooks and what he thought about those instances of police violence.
Well, the George Floyd case, nothing has to be said. I watched that. I couldn't really watch it for that long a period of time. It was over 8 minutes, and who could watch that? But it doesn't get any more obvious, or doesn't get any worse than that. And I think it's a different kind of a case. The event that took place yesterday I thought it was a terrible situation, but you can't resist a police officer. And, if you have a disagreement, you have to take it up after the fact. It was a very sad, very, very sad thing. And look, you take a look, it was out of control. The whole situation was out of control. I heard today and just got a report that the police officer's lawyer said that he heard a sound like a gun, like a gunshot, and he saw a flash in front of him. So that's an interesting, I don't know that I would have necessarily believed that, but I will tell you that's...
So there he's talking first about George Floyd saying he couldn't actually watch the entirety of the video.
He doesn't have the attention span.
That's, 100%. And then with Rashad Brooks, he says he shouldn't have resisted. He should just take it up later. But you just got done talking about George Floyd. George Floyd didn't get a later to take it up. Because even when you just lay there, they kill you. There was 30 seconds between those two things, and he pretended not to see the link.
So I'm done listening to this rhetoric, and like I said, it's right there categorized with the All Lives Matter arguments for me. I'm done having arguments with people about things that we have, the preponderance of evidence that supports that these statements are totally biased. Because when you think about all of the incidents that you have seen in the last few months of white people who have attacked police officers, have pulled out guns on police officers, have stormed in police officers' faces, have threatened police officers, and have walked away with their lives, then when you talk about that you should not resist arrest, mm-hmm. we are defining a specific power that we're giving to law enforcement that is excluding what the regulations are supposed to be saying, which is you begin by de-escalating the situation, right? And how do you de-escalate the situation? Well, we have plenty of videos that they know how to de-escalate the situation because they do it with white people all the time. And you see them talking with men swinging machetes and pulling out guns, mm-hmm. people that get tasered, somebody beat a cop up and took off in their car. Like they have montage videos of this. You can watch it on YouTube or any single social media platform. So when someone says you should not resist an officer, what they're saying is you as a person of color, you as a black man, do not have the right that other people in America, white people, have to mm-hmm. resist arrest because the consequences for you are different. And that's all it means. Let's not mince words. We're not doing that anymore, because if it really is about resisting arrest, then there should be a whole lot more dead white people in America based on that belief, right? So, and that's what happens when you have a president that doesn't understand the laws, the constitutions, that doesn't understand law enforcement and all of the entities beneath him, because he lacks a basic education and did not sit down and read a law book, did not sit down and read the police. I mean, imagine if I was burdened with public office, I would feel that it would be my responsibility to read every piece of legislation, every law book, anything, all of the basic enumerated laws of my particular region, because I'm over all of this stuff. All of this stuff is my responsibility. So Donald Trump should know everything about what police can do and cannot do, right? Though I guarantee you that, he probably watched it because it was in the parking lot of a Wendy's.
And even then he couldn't make it all the way through. Yeah. Well, look, he has a little bit more to say about this when he turns to talking about the cops. And I play this mostly so that you get a bit of an idea, and you'll get more because we got another video after this too, but about what the likelihood for reform getting signed by him is. So here is what he had to say, like a minute after that last video, when he turns to the police.
It's up to justice right now. It's going to be up to justice. I hope he gets a fair shake, because police have not been treated fairly in our country. They have not been treated fairly. But again, you can't resist a police officer like that. And they ended up in a very terrible disagreement. And look at the way it ended. Very bad, very bad. It's up to justice right now. It's going to be.
Police have been mistreated.
Wow, the cop like I said, killed. No, and it's code. It's white supremacy code, and a lot of people don't want to say that because people are. You remember when people were afraid to call Donald Trump a racist or a white supremacist? It's white supremacy code when you say things like the police has been mistreated in America. You know who's been mistreated in America? We can go down the line, but First Nations people have been mistreated in America. Black people have been mistreated in America. ADOS people. When you talk about Irish people had their season in America. Italians had their season in America. Puerto Ricans are still having their season in America. Immigrants, but when you talk about law enforcement and you say that they have been mistreated, I'm sure that there are police officers who have been unjustly treated. We know of the ones like the one that got fired for preventing a citizen being choked to death. Yeah, there are police people who have been mistreated. But to say that law enforcement as a whole, when you go back to the civil rights movement and you go back to Jim Crow and you can see actual footage of the way law enforcement has treated people of color in this country, and you turn around and say that, is because you are speaking to a specific group of people, and those are the people who hate Black people in America. Yeah. There's no way you're talking to anybody who has any semblance of intellect or humanity. Yeah. No.
Well, speaking of someone who doesn't have any semblance of humanity, let's turn to a little bit more. Donald Trump, during his recent interview on Fox News, also brought up the protests against police brutality. And after weeks of the protesters making clear what it is that they're fighting for in a number of different venues and having representatives ready to talk to politicians, members of the media, Fox could have them on if they wanted to. This is what Donald Trump's takeaway from the protests is.
Well, that's true. The protests, the protesters and anarchists and terrorists and looters and all of the people that were marching on various locations over the last couple of weeks, that's died down. They've lost some energy. That's good. But because many of them don't even know what they're protesting, frankly.
Don't know what they're protesting.
What's funny is, above all of this, is that Donald Trump, who's always talking about fake news, does an interview with Sean Hannity, who's not a real journalist. And people are like calling people who went to college for journalism and have degrees in journalism and have been practicing and studying journalism for years. Those are the fake news people. That makes me laugh. The funny thing is that when they showed the video of the protest, it's funny because those were the people that were protesting on Black Lives Matter Plaza, which feeds my soul and makes me so happy. he, Bunker Boy had to hide out on Black Lives Matter Plaza. But, the truth is that, remember when he talked about his inauguration, or when he talks, you can tell when Donald Trump is saying something that he knows is a lie, and he's like, honestly, they don't really know what they're protesting. Like that's when he was saying, and that the numbers are dwindling. Like when he said that there were a lot of people at the inauguration because his imagination is grand. It's just so funny to me to hear him say that, and that they don't know what they're protesting is because he's never had to stand for anything in life. Yeah. So he doesn't understand what people on the ground who are working and have to actually fight for the rights of their lives, what they're doing. So of course he's going to say they don't even know what they're protesting, because he doesn't know what they're protesting, because he's never ever had to take a stand for anything. So he has to take these fake stands like the Central Park Five, or immigrants are rapists and murderers, because he's the epitome and the symbol of mediocrity. And this whole anti-intellect thing, calling people smug and all of this stuff, it just comes from people who feel bad about themselves because they're ignorant. And, I know that sounds very humanistic, and, people want to just say, you know what, F that guy. But the truth is that Donald Trump is a sad, lonely, hurt individual, which is why he uses his mouth to hurt people. He called Rosie O'Donnell a pig. So hurt people. And that's who you dummies chose as the leader of the free world.
Yeah.
And you know who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, they chose him to be president. They apparently watched Sean Hannity, an old school journalist who, I swear, started that interview by saying, over the past 3 years, I don't think anyone in the world has had as hard a job as you, Donald Trump. That's what a tough journalist says. But anyway, and the thing is, unfortunately, most of the people watching that interview probably also couldn't articulate what the protests are about because they watch Fox News, and Fox News has told them from the very beginning, oh, it's just Antifa. It's just terrorists. And Trump called those protesters terrorists right there. And so, I don't know. I do think it's difficult for people who have not been exposed to at least a little bit of the undeniable videos of barbaric police brutality. But we'll see. I only want to read one other comment from Donald Trump, and that was something that came out of a Wall Street Journal interview. And so we've mentioned the fact, Ida gave a great response to the fact that Trump is holding his rally this Saturday in Tulsa, seemingly specifically to offend people. But this is what he had to say. I did something good. I made Juneteenth very famous. It's actually an important event, an important time, but nobody had ever heard of it.
And that's why, you know what, I can't get mad anymore because it's like Lord of the Flies. I keep saying Lord of the Flies. It's my motif for the day. It's the kill piggy guy. But you're talking about somebody who called for the execution of 5 Black and brown boys in New York.
Yep.
They have all these issues with their housing issues in New York. You talk about a man who has, both good people on both sides. So when he didn't know what Juneteenth was,
nope,
3 months ago, and the fact that, the funny thing was the anniversary of the Black Wall Street massacre was right around the George Floyd case. Mm-hmm. And it had been 30 years to the day that we dealt with that. And so that everybody started tweeting about that, everybody started talking about it and about writing about it. So now you tell me that you want to hold your rally at the very place where that happened. Who are you talking to?
Yeah. We know.
Come on.
Yeah. What other reason did you choose Tulsa for? No offense, Tulsa. Why did you choose? You know exactly why you put it on that anniversary. Or maybe Trump didn't know, but Stephen Miller or one of the racists he's surrounded himself with has. I mean, again, in Jacksonville, the convention is going to be there, and it's being put on the anniversary of a KKK attack against civil rights protesters. And, there's a thing going around today about the Facebook ad that apparently has a symbol that's supposed to evoke the Nazi tattoo for political prisoners, socialists and communists and all of that. And we know what the point of all of this is. I don't know if Trump knows. Trump is a racist, but he's not an intellectual racist. He's not. No. He doesn't know the history of all of the catchphrases and the tattoos that the white supremacists will get. He's just a racist, but he has surrounded himself with people who just scheme day after day. How am I going to signal to neo-Nazis? A little wink, wink that we're here for you.
Well, you know what? They have to, John, because that's all they got left, right? That's all they got left, right? That when you double down and say, I'm calling on the skinheads and the KKK and the 3%ers and the Oath Keepers, when you have to double down and say, I got to call on these people, is because that's all you got left. Because there's nobody who is intelligent, human. And listen, and everybody knows, I don't sit around here. I'm not a poster child for the Democratic Party either, because I think white supremacy runs through all of it. Mm-hmm. But when we sit and have this conversation, he is doubling down and calling on the base and the people who he insults the most, the poor people who think that all they have to offer is their whiteness because they don't have anything else. They can't go to college. They don't have health care. They don't have, a reasonable wage. They're not living honorable lives because people like Donald Trump are seeing to it that they don't. But he's like, at least you're white. And that's what they did to the sharecroppers. And that's what they did back in the day to the, that's the history. The greatest mind screw of all time is telling somebody, at least you're whiter than them. Yeah. So that's who he's got to call on. Who else is going to show up for Donald Trump right now that is not going to be ashamed of it? Not anybody with good sense.
No, not anybody who values their life, even considering the coronavirus cases going up in Oklahoma. You know what? Let's we just mentioned the pandemic. Let's turn now to that. We got 2 more stories, but I definitely want to mention one of the interesting This is a story. So, Ida, over the past few months, we've done a lot of coverage of meatpacking plants here on TDR and how they've been sort of the hotspots for coronavirus and how they've used the pandemic to get certain benefits from the government. So this is a really interesting case I want to delve into next. So meatpacking plants have been the source of coronavirus in communities, and they've been hard hit at times, having to shut down. Those shutdowns continue, by the way. In just the last week, some meatpacking plants have had to shut down for periods of time. But when it was getting really bad, you might remember that there was a period during these lockdowns where people were worried about meat running out, about not being able to get any. And that apparently had a goal, that fear that was stoked. After slaughterhouses in several states were closed, when thousands of workers tested positive and dozens died, industry lobbyists for the meatpacking plants lobbied the Trump administration to intervene with state and local officials or risk major meat shortages across American grocery stores. Some retailers put limits on the amount of meat customers could buy, and the fast food chain Wendy's at one point ran low on hamburgers. So effectively, these meatpacking plants were saying, you've got to let us continue to function, you've got to let us run the lines faster, stop shutting down, or else we're going to run out of meat. And let's talk about a few specifics here. So we have Smithfield Foods was the first company to warn back in April that the pandemic was pushing the United States to, quote, perilously close to the edge in terms of our meat supply. Tyson Foods also sounded the alarm, saying that millions of pounds of meat will disappear from the supply chain as plants were forced to close down. But here's what is interesting about that. As they're saying, you've got to help us or we're going to run out of meat. They weren't running out of meat for certain customers. That same month, Smithfield sent China 9,171 tons of pork, one of its highest monthly export totals to that market in the past 3 years. Tyson exported 1,289 tons of pork to China, the most since January of 2017. In all, a record amount of pork produced in the U.S., 129,000 tons, was exported to China just in April, as these companies were saying, look, yeah, we got coronavirus and workers are dropping left and right, but you gotta let us keep running or else you're not going to be able to get a hamburger. And then they package up your hamburger and they ship it to China. Pretty amazing what they were willing to do to make that money.
They must really hate China if they sent that much pork over there.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. It's like the meat game in America has always been such a hustle, and they have so much power. Like, and I think of like two specific instances, like during the World War II, when there was a shortage of meat, and then they started saying that kidney meat was necessary because they were running out of the other meat, and then they created a need for kidney meat, and then we never heard about kidney meat again because it's actually awful. And then when Oprah Winfrey spoke out against the beef industry, and then they shut her down.
Yes,
remember that?
Yes.
So it's just. And so my point in saying that is that the meat packing industries have always had so much power in this country. They have the best lobbyists. And what I want to say is to people of color is that we need to go get those lobbyists to lobby for us the way they lobby for steaks.
Exactly. Yeah, you're 100% right. That I don't remember what book it was in, but there was a book that analyzed that incident with Oprah, and it was fascinating. And you can see the history of, you know, attempts to change nutritional guidelines being like co-opted by either meat or sugar, basically. It's meat and sugar, sometimes dairy. So much power. But here, it's not just that they lied about the shortages when there was never going to be a shortage. They were producing tons. They didn't want to shut down. And they didn't care that people were getting sick and maimed and going into medical bankruptcy and dying. Tons of meatpacking plant employees have died. And they just wanted to rush to full production. And by the way, it's not just America. Germany also had an outbreak. 650 workers at a single slaughterhouse tested positive for COVID-19 just recently. I don't know what it is about these plants in particular, but they are apparently a breeding ground for coronavirus.
Because it lives in meat. We're walking human meat.
That's true.
Coronavirus lives in meat. And you know what's funny is that the sad truth about all of this stuff, John, is that the toxic capitalism, that the you know, working class people have always been the casualties of this toxic capitalism. And so when we talk about coronavirus and people fighting for going back to work, and because of the economy, It's just that we've been indoctrinated into fighting for billionaires and billion-dollar corporations because we value that more than we do our lives at this point. And
Yeah.
that's toxic capitalism. And I'm not a communist.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think like healthcare workers have gotten it worse because they were forced to work, got sick. Lots of people working in grocery stores and basically food manufacture and retail have died. And now, like, there were people who spoke out. We tried to against preemptive early reopening, but they got it pretty much everywhere. And we're seeing in some states the cases going up once again. And it's not going to be the rich who are going to die in the second wave. It is going to be the workers. And many of them have been brainwashed into thinking that this is the only path, or else these workers will go bankrupt. Forget the fact that theoretically the government could give more than $1,200. They've been convinced that that's not an option. And they've also been told that effectively, if they aren't forced to go back to work, then that's authoritarianism. Effectively, the Constitution's dead unless we send you back into the flames.
Oh yeah, you can't wear a mask. You can't make me wear a mask because it's my right. It's just privilege that leads you to believe that you can go into somebody's private business, and think that you could do whatever you want to do. You can't walk in there with shirts and with no shirt on, and some of them, and you can't walk in there with no shoes on if they say you can't. But you think you can walk in there without a mask and cough all your germs on other people who can be vulnerable to it. And then when you think about all of this stuff and with coronavirus and all these conspiracy theories. If we have such a mistrust of the government in general, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, a progressive, you don't trust the American government because it has evolved or devolved into being the biggest shit ever in America, right? So let's be honest about that. So you distrust the government, but in certain instances, you choose when to trust them and when not. Why would you take a chance? I don't care where you are on the political aisle, because a dumb celebrity told you they're not wearing a mask because they're not coming in contact with people and they live in a house where people go buy their groceries for them or deliver them to them. That is why you're going to stand with people who get tested daily, have access to all of the things that they need to survive should they have it. It is just such a mishandling of information. And so for me, I don't trust the American government because the American government has abused its power. It has abused our dollars. It has abused us. So I'm not going to take a chance on coronavirus because I honestly don't know enough about it, because every week they switch the narrative to suit whatever companies and corporations they need to suit. So that's why I get so angry. And for what I read this morning, the red states are the ones who are being overtaken by coronavirus, right? So now you have a whole bunch of people who believe that Jesus is going to heal them and that this is a punishment or whatever it is that they're being fed. And the truth is that their government mishandled the situation and failed them.
Yeah. Ida, I get you on the masks, but like, I want to be a strong alpha man. And the leaders of our country say that you are a weak beta male unless you expose yourself and your family to a lethal virus. And I want to be tough. I want to be a tough guy. What am I supposed to do?
The funny thing is, if you look at all of those guys that you're talking about, let's be real, I'm not an advocate of violence, but I am not going to turn away from confronting violence if I have to defend myself. And I'm never going to tell people not to defend themselves in the name of taking the high road, because I told you I'm done with the high road. The high road has gotten us in this big mess. But look at all of those alpha males. Tell me which one of those guys you think could actually win in a fight. Ted Cruz is such a coward that he challenged Ron Perlman to a fight with somebody else.
I've never heard of that before.
It's
the first time.
Okay, go to Twitter and type in Ted Cruz and Ron Perlman.
Oh, no. I know that story.
Oh,
I've just never heard of a guy challenging, oh, yeah? Well, why don't you fight him? I've never seen that before.
Cowards. And that's why I'm telling you, you have people on the ground that have to go to work in steel mills, that are tilling soil, that are working in factories and building cars, idolizing people who are assigning other people to go have a fist fight for them.
That's amazing.
Think about that.
Think about that. Not too long. Your brain might bleed, but think about it for a little bit. Okay, before we go to our last story, we got one more for you. We're going to read just a few comments. By the way, I saw a comment in the chat. People were asking Ida if that's Celia Cruz, if that's a picture of Celia Cruz.
It is.
It is?
It is.
Okay, they identified it. Yeah, there you go.
Nice. She's one of my heroes, so yeah.
I love it. Let's see. Okay. So you may not know, Ida, but people don't like Matt Gaetz here in our audience. And so one of the things is to send in a super chat just saying Matt Gaetz is a tool. So Leslie, thank you for acknowledging that. John's Venn diagram of desire says Matt Gaetz is a tool. And also, glad you're here, Ida. Sherry says Matt Gaetz is a rep and is my rep and a huge tool. Ghani says Matt Gaetz is a tool. Love you, Ida.
I love you back.
Ty Johnson says Matt Gaetz' imaginary family thinks he's a tool.
I love that.
Dre1 says, I love you, Ida. You're a great role model.
Oh, thank you. I love you back.
Charles Massey says, Ida, good to see you today. Hashtag Matt Gaetz is a tool. Not fans of Matt Gaetz. I think you guys all agree on that. Sometimes I don't read these immediately, so I don't always know exactly what it's a reference to, but Feisty Fan put a face palm with I cannot even, and Nathan Gee has ugh, I just can't anymore with this country with a face palm. But honestly, that could be almost any of the stories that we've done today.
It's funny when I think about Matt Gaetz, right? I think about people like you, right? I think about white people who grow up in neighborhoods, working class neighborhoods that have to work really hard to go to school. They work through themselves through college. And listen, I understand the whole privilege argument, but I don't invalidate somebody's struggle because it doesn't look like mine. So I think about people who work, they work hard. Some people grew up with single parents. Mm-hmm. They bust their asses to better their lives in spite of their circumstances. And then here you have this privileged guy who is spouting these talking points that is a spit in the face to all of those people because he was granted an opportunity based on his privilege, and it is just so insulting to people everywhere. So imagine then now you add the component of gender and race. So now it's ×3 and ×4. So who can like that guy? That guy is, like I said, he is a symbol of mediocrity. A mediocrity meets privilege and audacity. Mm-hmm. And speaking to people on behalf of those who have to bust their asses every day just to have a basic life. Yeah. So who can like Matt Gaetz? Who can like him?
I honestly don't know, but he does apparently have fans because he does the one thing that Republicans do. The only thing you have to do, well, be racist, but also troll the libs. If you, like he has power, he can accomplish things and he wants to cut taxes for corporations and rich people. He'll do all that behind the scenes, but to people's faces, he just trolls the libs. And then that placates so many of them. Give us a little bit of racism and make me think that the libs are crying more than I am inside, and I'll let you do whatever you want. You can take billions, you can take trillions. I don't care.
You know who liked? I figured it out. The people who love incels, they love Matt Gaetz.
Yeah.
Those are the people that like him.
Okay. Let's talk about one more story real quick. I just want to get your quick impressions on a few of the things here. John Bolton's book is coming out soon, The Room Where It Happened. I assume a first draft title that they decided to stick with. I want to give you just a couple of the most shocking revelations from the book. Before we do that, though, I think that every single bit of coverage of this book and what it contains needs a preface, and that preface is John Bolton is one of the worst people that America has literally ever produced. I also don't trust almost anything he says. I hope he doesn't make any money off of this book, and I hope he rots away for the rest of his life alone and scared. That's what I hope.
I'm with you.
Maybe that's harsh. I don't know, but
no, that's not harsh.
Yeah. Now that said, he was in the room where it happened. And so here's a little bit of what he says happened during his time working for Donald Trump. On China and the 2020 election, he says that the conversation between the leadership of China and Donald Trump turned to the coming U.S. presidential election during one meeting. And alluding to China's economic capability to affect the ongoing campaigns, Trump pleaded with Xi to ensure he'd win. He stressed the importance of farmers and increased Chinese purchases of soybeans and wheat in the electoral outcome. So while Trump is in China dealing with their leadership, he's saying, if you do all this, it's going to help me get reelected, so do it. Not, it's good for our farmers. It's, I don't care about them. Do it for me, effectively.
I think that the worst people on the planet are the ones that are complicit in the presence of wrongdoings, right? And I think that the American people really have, in terms of protesting, we have to violently protest with our votes and our dollars, and we really have to get rid of the people who sit around and profit from our misery and trauma. That being said, when you think about John Bolton, he is somebody who, Donald Trump rolls with people of his ilk, right? And instead of speaking up on behalf of the American people in the time when it was necessary and it was appropriate, it's let me figure out how to capitalize on this. I'll write a book, right? And I'll get rich off of that. And then I can be the Ann Coulter of men, or I can be the horrible human being that profits off, gaslighting people, misinformation, misconstruing things, lies. So when I think about him, and I remember that people were like, calling for him, pleading for him to stand up, and then people were defending him, and people were saying, I just remember a whole bunch of different reactions to John Bolton. But the truth is that these guys are all part of the same gang. And a lot of them are Republicans and a lot of them are Democrats. And that gang is the gang of people who profit off of the struggle of the American people. Yeah. And so whether it is by writing a book and withholding information or lies, or whether it's gaslighting people, trying to get people to go fight protesters because that you go to jail. Man, y'all going to jail, y'all dying, y'all being broke, y'all being sick is all very profitable to the people in our government.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
they make money off of.
And he's trying to right now. Yeah, I saw like a political cartoon going around this morning, and it was a picture of two books. It was a really big book and then a really little book. And the really big book was John Bolton, What I Saw, and the really little book was What I Did About It.
Exactly.
He didn't do anything. And he just took notes and decided to turn it into a book. But let's talk a little bit more about that book. One of the things that stood out to me as the most reprehensible involved the Chinese internment camps. Bolton writes that at the same meeting between Trump and Xi at the G20, the Chinese leader defended the detention of 1 million Uyghurs in internment camps. Quote, according to our interpreter, Trump said that Xi should go ahead with building the camps, which Trump thought was exactly the right thing to do. We've talked about these before on the show. They are brutal re-education torture camps, effectively, where people disappear, people turn up dead, disease spreads, horrendous human rights abuses. And apparently Trump said, no, go ahead. You should keep doing that. Oh, it looks like we might have had a little bit of a connection problem with Aida. I'm going to see about that. We're going to pause for 1 second. Oh, Aida, we've got you? Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here.
One little hiccup. Otherwise,
is that the camps where they? It's all great. Are those the camps where they have to do the Thriller dance, or is that North Korea?
Oh, no, I don't know about that one. I wouldn't put it past anyone.
Maybe it's North Korea. I may be wrong, but I saw the videos where they make them all learn the Thriller choreography, and if they miss something, they get in trouble.
Wow.
I just think it's interesting. So there are two things here, right? One is, we know he's a racist, but if I was an American citizen and I heard this about the president of my country, I would be worried about two things. Either one, he's a racist and he thinks that that's appropriate treatment of Chinese people, right? Or two, that sounds like a good plan. What do you think he's thinking about when it comes to the people who he wants to persecute in this country? Because, for example, I'm starting to think the Supreme Court doesn't like me. So if you think that's appropriate punishment for citizens of a country and you're telling a president that, I would be alarmed, because as he tries to push this democracy into an authoritarian, government, which is obvious by the way that he behaves and the way that he speaks and the actions that he takes, then he might think that that would be suitable treatment for the people in this country, right? So I would be worried about that. I mean, unfortunately, we gotta worry about John Bolton's ass because we don't know if we could trust him either. Exactly. So now we got to Americans have to live in the constant state of paranoia and trauma, and that is being issued by the state. And that is why we have to fight for a true democracy in this country.
100%. Really fast, just a couple more things, little things like he asked if Finland was a part of Russia at a meeting. I don't know who. I don't know if it was to like the leadership of Finland or Russia, or if it just occurred to him, hey, wait, is it? He said to Theresa May, oh, you're a nuclear power? He didn't know. I mean, I guess it's good that the UK isn't constantly like testing things and making a big deal out of it, I guess. Yeah, there was just a bunch more saying that that journalists need to be executed and things like that. The sort of, run-of-the-mill authoritarian stuff that's going to make the next 4 years very exciting if he wins re-election and doesn't have to run again. So we'll see. But anyway, yeah, the book could end up being interesting. Don't buy it because then Bolton will get money. But yeah, we'll
Anonymous. Where are you at, Anonymous? Get that book online for us so we can read it online.
Exactly. Okay, well, Aida, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to have you on as co-host. The reaction from the audience was absolutely awesome. And it was great getting your perspective.
Thank you. On Fridays, I do my own visual podcast called Truth Serum. It streams live on YouTube on my page, also on Facebook and Twitch and Twitter. It's at 12 p.m. Pacific time. So check it out. Tomorrow, I'm going to have a bunch of comedians on talking about politics and comedy.
That sounds awesome. And everybody, go watch your special on Netflix. It's incredible. Aida, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, John. I love you.
Anytime.
Always.
Let's talk again soon.
Yeah, you got to come do my show.
That sounds good. Oh, by the way, we mentioned your show yesterday, and JR was like, when am I going to be invited on the show?
Oh, you know what? I sent him a message.
Okay.
Yeah. So my show specifically targets people of color, and we break down issues and we talk about things from the progressive perspective of people of color. Mm-hmm. But I would like for you to come, and we want to have this conversation about the environment and about climate change and about the oppression of people of color through the method of the climate situation in this country.
Awesome.
So I need your voice.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And we needed your voice. Thank you for providing it.
It's great.
Have a good one, Aida.
Thank you. You too. Love you, TYT people.
Thank you. And everyone at home, let's catch up a little bit on what you've all been saying. There was a lot of news, so we're more behind on the super chats. Can't guarantee I'm going to go through everything, but I will try. Chubtoad says Matt Gaetz is a tool. # Tool Lives Matter, which is not acknowledged enough. But Matt Gaetz is very much a tool. Charlie Ellis says we are Dragon Squad, and Matt Gaetz is a tool, which is actually rule number 2 of Dragon Squad. Lil Yumper says, sorry for misspelling of Aida's name. It's okay. We type fast. Sometimes misspellings happen. Atomic says, Matt Gaetz' imaginary family, the only ones who love him. Possibly. Wayne says, San Francisco is following the Burning Man model of Black Rock Rangers as unarmed crisis intervention by trained citizen helpers. I hope this spreads to other communities. That is interesting. Thank you, Wayne. Miranda says, if you are more afraid of losing your own life than taking a life unnecessarily, don't be a cop. That's a good rule as well. Riley says, when I worked at Dollar General, a cop complained to my manager because I made him pay for his Mountain Dew. Whew. Rodney says, is David Simon, creator of The Wire, accurate that the reason why the police has ended up militarized is because of drug wars? Was Breonna Taylor's home was treated like a drug den? I'm sure that doesn't help. I mean, I think it's a combination of that, a combination of military equipment coming back from overseas because of our wars in the Middle East. But I think that's probably a very big part of it. TXX says, Aida, you're amazing. Love from the UK. Thank you. I'm sure she, in spirit, got your thanks. Real Life Jolie says, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for missing Aida's first intro on TDR. My darn Dotson nephew again. But yay for Aida. I'd missed her. So tell me, Aida, have you got any cats? I don't believe that she has pets. I'm not sure. House says, Hickenlooper answered All Lives Matter and referred to the shooting of George Floyd in Senate primary debates in the last 2 weeks. Latest debate, he was asked if he was out of touch. I would say that he should take that. Out of touch is the best spin on what you just said. Thank you. Feisty Fan says, I can't be the only person that has trouble following Trump's train of thought, right? It's like verbal diarrhea. Exactly. Among other types of diarrhea. He's probably inflicted with constantly. Due to a fast food diet. Try and Feel Me says, Trump is literally the villain in every anime show I've ever seen. What in the world? Handle it later? Did he say that? Yeah. Justin Matthews says, why do I have to be missing Ida live? Happy Thursday, John and Ida. It's all going to be posted eventually. You'll be able to see it, but thank you. Mello says, in the comments, why do you only get an hour to stream? I don't get only an hour to stream. We're actually over our hour. Generally, when we're back in studio, we will. But here, it's, we got to start the post process. I'm going to be doing an interview. Shahid Buttar is going to be back on the show. I got to interview him in about 20 minutes, actually. So there is a limit on how long I can go. Lil Yumper says, a perfect example of racial discrimination by cops is when one person kills 30 people in a theater and gets captured alive, while one is suspected of submitting a fake 20 and is dead. Wonder why. Yeah, I think we all know. Kelly says, wow, Ida, not only laugh out loud funny and beautiful, but razor sharp intelligence, love her point of view. Thank you. You made my day. Thank you, Kelly. I'm sure she appreciates that. Ariadne, thank you for your message. Macy says, Ida is always on point, always speaking the truth and always real. I love when she's on the show. Me too. And I'm assuming you've seen her comedy. If you haven't, everybody, you really do have to. Franklin sent us in one of his poems saying, gonna get a membership for my spouse, Crunchy Frog. Over a half century we have logged, maybe another half, so says this song. To the damage report we belong. Ferengi rules we need to keep up. Do it and I shut up. I don't want you to shut up, though. I enjoy these. Thank you. Allison says Facebook took down a Trump ad because of a hate image. Yeah, I thought about talking about that today. We briefly mentioned it. Maybe tomorrow. David says Smithfield is owned by China. Look it up. Well, that would certainly explain that choice. Thank you. Real Life Jolie says, Ida speaks truth to power. I do think that they are shipping their infected pork to China the way they are ostensibly trying to poison us. Well, look, they apparently think it's safe. And honestly, I haven't seen too much evidence of like food being transported around being a vector for COVID, which is like one of seemingly the few positive things we have going for us in this pandemic. But it is certainly getting people working at the plant sick. Feisty Fan says, was it the meatpacking plant or was this Trump offering a favor to China in hopes of his reelection? Montario, thank you for your cool. Matthias says, John, can you compare and contrast to Denmark? I'm assuming you're talking about meat production or possibly COVID. Possibly. I do know, I'm thinking tomorrow, if you haven't looked at Sweden, look at their numbers recently. They were held up by the right here as like a model for us. It has been pretty rough there. So we might talk about that. Zane says, dang it, I overslept the damage report again. That's strike 2, Zane. Consider yourself on notice. Luciana Banu says, just sending you two and all the TDRs my love. Thank you. Verena says, Germany here. Same issue in the slaughterhouse that exists in the U.S. Cheap foreign labor, often housed in derelict, cheap accommodations, plus horrible working conditions. 7,000 people now quarantined. Wow. Yeah, we mentioned one of those, but apparently it's much bigger than we thought. Another message says Gates lives with a 19-year-old he calls his son. Yeah, so look, I don't know the situation, so I'm not going to judge or even speak on it because I don't understand it. I do know that I fundamentally don't trust Matt Gaetz about virtually anything. So look, whatever's going on with his family is totally up to him. I'm not going to judge that part of his life, but I will judge his politics. G Love, thank you. Donna says, Ida, love your spirit, and Matt Gaetz the tool. Thank you. Allison says, I love listening to Ida preach. You and me both. Feisty Fan says, love your take, Ida. Thank you. Elijah says, Ida, I think it's the captured revolutionaries in the Philippines that are forced to learn MJ dances. That's possible. Might have to look that up. Jay says, doing my part for progressives. Matt Gaetz is a tool. Thank you, everyone. And you know what? I've been forgetting the last few days. So if you will just bear with me and hold for 1 second. I wanted to give you an update on little Abby, who's got bedhead because she was just taking a little nap. She's feeling much better. She had been sick. She didn't have energy. Her tail was always down. But I think she's feeling much better. Right, Abby? Her brother Hilo is running around outside, but she likes to take morning naps. That's why her hair's a little bit off. I think it was jammed into a pillow. Thank you, bud. Anyway, hope you appreciated the pup. But anyway, thank you everybody for joining us. Great to have you here. Hope you enjoyed Ida being on the show. Hopefully we'll have her back soon. And, we're going to conclude the week tomorrow with Brett Ehrlich, who's going to join me with the Garbage People of the Week. There has been so much garbage. I don't know how we're going to choose. But anyway, you should go to the TDR community channel on YouTube where you can vote. There's been some really vigorous competition in recent weeks. Lots of people voting, so feel free to take part in that. Feisty fan, thank you for your super chat for Abby. And everybody, thank you for joining us. Stay safe out there. Oh, and check the channel later today for the interview I alluded to. That'll be going up later on. I'll see you soon. Stay safe out there.